The first source I viewed was the movie Whistleblower. In this film, Catherine Volkovac is a police officer in Nebraska who gets the chance to move to Bosnia to work for the United Nations International Police Force. Within the short time she was there, she becomes head of the Gender Affairs Department after handling a case where a Muslim woman was beaten in a domestic abuse case. Volkovac begins a case where two women are found to be sold into a Bosnian sex trafficking circle. She finds that the circle is not only run by Bosnians, but also a few of her fellow co-workers in the IPTF. In the movie, she attempts to bring her findings up to the UN, but her files are closed because they are trying to protect her fellow co-workers, and in the movie they state that these co-workers have immunity. Eventually she is able to get the information out to the public with the help of Peter, one of the higher-ups, and eventually many of the people who worked for the international police will get fired, but no charges are brought to them, which is unfortunate, but that's just how it is. They, like I said, they had immunity, however, they still got fired. Her multiple attempts to do the right thing were constantly put out by the corruption within the IPTF, the local police departments, and the border patrols. Throughout the movie, there were multiple cases where she was so close to being able to kind of put out this sex trafficking circle. However, multiple accusations were brought against her, and she was constantly getting phone calls, emails from other co-workers saying to stop, you're getting into the wrong place, you just need to stop altogether. So this clearly brings the connection between sex trafficking and corruption, how the not only will there be a sex trafficking circle where maybe people that aren't police officers or government officials are a part of, but they still are main customers, or they are still allowing this to happen and giving them the proper utensils to keep it going. So, the second source that I viewed was of a BBC interview with Ben Anderson. He was interviewing Major Struber, a U.S. Marine who was placed in the Sangin province of Afghanistan to give advice and kind of try to eliminate or at least minimize the corruption of the police there. And what Ben Anderson saw while he was there, he saw police firing wildly into the crowd after some shots came from a village, but the police officers responded with, "We were shot at, so we returned fire." This is clearly not the correct thing to do. He also saw multiple police officers smoking joints, and he reported that some of them were so high that they could barely even stand, let alone do anything. So these Marines were placed in the Sangin province to, like I said, to kind of give advice to these police officers and kind of sort out the corruption that's going on within this police force. And some of the things that are corrupt, you may say, are there was a lot of false imprisonment where the police officers would gather everyone in an area when there was a crime committed and wait for their families to arrive so that they could force the families to give them money in order to release these individuals who didn't do anything, but they were still just caught up in the wrong group. Another thing that was there were chai boys, which are little, like 14 to 17-year-old young boys who were used as servants. However, they were actually sex slaves. 4 of these boys were actually shot, and 3 of them were killed because of their injuries. When Major Struber accused the deputy police chief of it, he just stated that the boys are often like being in the police barracks, and they enjoy giving up their bodies for the police officers. Ben Anderson went on to say that that basically it's just unfortunate because the rest of the society knows that this is happening, but it's just kind of like a social norm in a way. And like he said, that these Chai boys, the deputy police chief said that they like giving up their bodies, but apparently he said a different word, but he didn't. But Ben Anderson had to cut it out of the interview. And these are just some of the small pieces of corruption that are within the Afghan police force that he talked about in this documentary. So, for the third source I viewed, I looked at the case that we looked at earlier in class on the BBC News page about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and how he's the first Israeli Prime Minister to be indicted. On the first case, which was named Case 1000, he was involved in charges of fraud and breach of trust. These charges are a result of Netanyahu and his wife receiving gifts from 2 very wealthy men, one being an Israeli Hollywood producer and the other one being an Australian billionaire. These gifts that they were given were mainly included cigar boxes and cases of champagne that were basically regularly delivered and valued at a total of about $200,000. The second case, which was named Case 2000, involves the same 2 charges as before in Case 1000, except this had to do with competing newspapers in the area. Netanyahu had meetings with Arnon Moses, who was a controlling shareholder of the Yedioth Aronoth. Sorry for that one. That media group, which basically publishes the leading newspaper, or the leading Israeli newspaper. During these meetings, they discussed on improving the coverage of Netanyahu in this media group, along with imposing restrictions on another newspaper, which is actually a free daily newspaper, the Israel Hoyom. This is a free newspaper owned by a U.S. casino mogul who is in support of Netanyahu and his political cause. Basically, in all actuality, so Netanyahu and Moses, I don't know how to pronounce his name, were trying to strike a deal to limit the circulation of this free newspaper which supported Netanyahu's cause, in return for the media group, which I can't pronounce, to get more publicity and economic satisfaction. However, Netanyahu will get more coverage in this newspaper. The third case, which is named Case 4000, it's the most important one in the idea of the indictment of Prime Minister Netanyahu, because it involves bribery, and this includes regulatory favors of about $500 million to the Bezek utility, which is basically the AT&T of Israel, in return for the Bezek website to give the keys, basically to give the keys to Netanyahu for the website so he could put on as much information that helps his cause altogether, which will give him hopefully, which in his idea would give him hopefully the advantage in the next election, and However, this clearly went downhill when it leaked to the media, and he is now indicted. So yeah.